I never replied.
Unmuted now.
Oh.
All right, it is 5 o'clock, so why don't we get going? So, good evening, everyone. We'd like to call our Grants Pass School Board District 7 meeting to order. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday the 12th. We would like to begin our meeting by standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all join me, please. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, our second item on the agenda is our communications and presentations. So 2.1, written communication. Superintendent Cole, do we have any written communications?
We do not.
Okay. 2.2 is requests from persons wishing to speak. Since we are a hybrid model tonight, we'd like to invite any of those who wish to speak to any item on our agenda to please submit your questions in the chat. And Dr. Bloomquist will be monitoring that and let us know at the appropriate time. So 2.3 is our financial report.
Yeah, so the remaining items in this section of the agenda are all just written communications. If the board has any specific questions on any of these, feel free to ask and we will ask the appropriate director to respond. Can we confirm that Director Ely is able to tune in from remotely?
I will take a peek here. I don't see her yet.
Okay.
No, not yet.
All right, 2.4 is out-of-state travel. So we have 4 items, the basketball team, the wrestling team, an AVID National Conference, and a Career Vision Conference, all coming up in the month of December, looks like. So do we need to vote on this, or we just...
No, when you approve the consent agenda, it'll approve all of these.
Any questions from our board members on the travel?
Actually, this is not approval, my bad. This is just communicating to the board.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear about Career Vision Conference. What that looks like.
All right. Well, we better win if we're sending them all the way to Nevada to wrestle and play basketball. No pressure. All right, 2.5, OSHA complaints.
Again, just a communication to the board if you have questions, as well as the EL report is required to report to the board. So if there are any specific questions around these, I believe Director Ely has spoken about the volume of OSHA reports, and OSHA has said we have 6 investigators for the entire state. They're used to getting about 50 complaints a year, and they are getting that average per day right now, largely relating to schools and hospitals and mandate requirements.
So could we have Director Ely request the complaint that was filed? The original complaint?
We do have those are submitted to us. They should be in here.
No, not for the response, the original complaint.
So I have thought that several of them were in there, multiple.
There were.
Were they under? Or should they be under?
OSHA complaints are, I think, 2.5.
I read through most of them. If they're captured here.
Numbered on the pages, but there's about 7 or 8 of them here.
In the communication.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's fine.
All right.
And I missed them, I should stop the response.
Yes. One of them, yeah, we are not numbered, but
Just the first page.
First page of each.
The first page of the report.
yeah, here's one dated September 21. And it's actually just,
for September 14th.
The 27th, the 4th,
Yeah.
14th,
They're in line in
27th.
order.
okay.
Apparently it's the same person.
Question, are we still required to respond regardless of how many complaints we get per day, per week?
Yep.
Within that 5 day, is it 5 days?
I believe it is 5 days. So, I believe, member Richardson, you're correct in that I thought I saw one, but it was actually from Department of, these are pretty much our responses, the Department of Consumer and Business Services in September 21. The next OSHA, the educational safety. So there's only one in there, but there have been numerous, as you can see by the responses from the district. And complaints have been largely around people not wearing masks, and complaints have been around. There was a complaint against the district for helping to give people language to put on a religious exemption, which was unfounded. Was one of the complaints as well. So we've been able to mitigate all of the complaints with the explanation or documentation that we provide necessary training, reminders, and discipline when appropriate.
Have there been,
If we can get the original complaint out.
Yep, I'll make sure.
have there been any unresolved?
No,
I know I saw some responses back saying thank you for your timely response and addressing the complaint.
yeah, nothing is unresolved at this point.
Okay.
Okay. 2.6 or
I was just gonna say, as a business owner, I have learned that you do have the right to public information requests as to who the complainant is. Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
2.6, our annual ODEL report.
Again, just a required report to share with the board. Director Tola is on the line if the board has specific questions around communication.
Any questions from the board?
Mhm.
All right, and thank you. We'll go to 3.0, our consent agenda. So we need approval of our October 12th board agenda this evening, and then our September 28th board draft minutes, as well as our personnel report. I will entertain a motion to approve all of those, if someone would like to make that.
I move to approve 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? Tanya, can we have a roll call vote, please, since we have Debbie on the line?
Member Brownell,
Yes.
Member Neville,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes.
Member Coleman,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Richardson.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So our reports, we'll start with our elementary principals reports.
Yeah, get us back on track on regular cycle of getting school reports. You've got the scattergun from everybody last time, so we're going to go into a rotating update for the board and celebrate what's going on. And starting with elementary, I believe they were going to do a group report, and one principal is going to carry the load.
Do we know which principal? Oh, Christine, hang on, Christine. Okay, try that now.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
All right. And it's a really staticky on my end. So I'm hoping that you can hear me well. Okay. So Christine Minnie from Redwood here, and I am speaking on behalf of all of the elementary principals. And this month, we wanted to take the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the progress we have made in the world of social emotional supports. And at the elementary level, we are able to offer so much more social emotional support for our students this year than any other previous year, and we're really excited about that. We currently have a full-time behavior intervention specialist, a full-time options skills trainer, an on-site therapist 1 day a week, as well as our Learning Center teacher who meets with our students who need brain breaks or check-in and check-outs. It is important to note that 4 or 5 years ago, all we had was our Learning Center person and our options therapist 1 day a week. All of these resources allow us to provide support for so many more students than previous years and provide services on a much broader spectrum than in the past. Not only will this help with student behavioral needs, but it also provides students with a much higher level of emotional support, as well as help with development of social skills. Each school has a team process that meets weekly or bi-weekly to discuss student concerns, build behavior intervention plans to support the student. What we have learned is that if we aren't getting the supports that the students need emotionally, socially, behaviorally, then they struggle to access the core instruction in the classroom, and sometimes even to access the academic supports and interventions that we can provide. What we are finding is that these resources are needed more than ever right now because of what our children have been doing for the past couple years. And we are so grateful and appreciate so much the attention and support the district and school board has put in the area at this level for us. So thank you so, so much. That's all we wanted to share with you tonight. So we just wanted that focus and to share that. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Christine, if I could just ask one question of you before you run off. I was attending a meeting today with a number of teachers involved, and they were making comments on just how wonderful it's been to have the children back. And I'm just curious if you and the other principals are seeing, hopefully, increased morale from the staff and the teachers with the kids back, and if things are going well in the elementary schools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The difference between having the students online versus having them in person, it is night and day. Just having the students walking in the hallways, sitting in the classrooms, out on the playground, eating lunch in our cafeterias, it is night and day. So yes, morale is definitely different.
One of the things that they mentioned was that they've noticed a marked decrease in the students' abilities. And I'm just curious from a principal perspective, do we have a sense of how far behind some of our students are as they're returning now to in-person education?
It varies from student to student. We're seeing, we just had our universal screening meetings. And so we talked a lot about stamina. And so we're, like I said, it varies student to student. So stamina was a word that just kind of kept coming up again and again. We went from students in CDL and hybrid and a shorter day going until 1:30. And so now we're going all the way up to 2:15 again. And so, like I said, it varies student to student. So some students are farther behind than others, but we're taking them where they're at and we're meeting their needs, and we'll get them to where we can get them.
Christine, can you speak, and maybe somebody else can, to what we're seeing regarding recoupment of skills? Because we know there's regression that occurs due to our circumstances. Is the recoupment, we deal with this every year, summer slump, we can call it, but is the recoupment of skills looking promising, I would say is the term I'm looking for, to be encouraged that we are going to get kids where they need to be?
And I can let somebody else speak. I'm very encouraged and very excited about what we're seeing already with some of the recoupment of the skills. And I think that's because they're in person now and we have them every day, all day. But I can let some of my fellow colleagues speak as well.
I'll jump in. One of the things that we noticed in the early data is that I'll speak to reading with our Acadience data. As you know, that's our universal screener that we use with all kindergarten through fifth graders for reading assessment. the students, third, fourth, and fifth graders, some of the second graders, though people aren't where we want them to be, it's not as far behind as we maybe feared. But our K1-2s are lower than we're used to at this time of year. And even kinders who've never been in school before, even the kinders came in a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing in the past few years. So it was interesting to see that the students, this is just a hypothetical, the students who had that strong primary foundation, who had quote unquote normal schooling during those times, their skills have carried through. Like I said, not exactly where we want, but not to a place that we're super worried. We'll catch them up over time. But our primary students who had those first years really interrupted, that's where we're seeing the larger learning loss. So we will get them caught up, but it's not something that can be expected to be done in a year. It's not that we're going to take all these kids and in 1 year get them to the where we want them to be in a traditional timeline of a year. It's going to take a few years to recoup the time that we lost with the COVID shutdown. So we've got some strategies in place. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit later when we talk about our district improvement plan. But do know it's not something that we have any expectation that we're going to get them caught up in 1 year. This is going to be a multi-year process.
Brian, did you have a comment or a question?
Oh, no, just before we go to the next topic.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right, well, thank you very much for your report. We appreciate it. Next item, freshman on track.
I just have a question. Are we able to make the video big? Or does it have to be the little side thing? Do you have that capability?
Director Bloomquist, did you hear the question from Member Dale Grange?
Yeah, what would you like?
Like to see whoever's speaking, would like to see a larger screen on our end of things. And so the screen share be smaller. Is that possible with the video being larger is the question.
I don't have a lot of options on this one. I just changed the view a little bit. Did that change for you guys?
And now we can see 3 individuals instead of 1, but they're the same size and they're at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I think that's the default for Zoom is what I think.
Is there any way to swap the agenda screen with the video? Because we're seeing the agenda, but we all have a copy of the agenda. So I'm just wondering if that's better.
That's much better.
You want that?
Now we can see Brian clearly.
There you go.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right, well, freshman on track. Director Evans, we'll turn the time over to you.
Am I big on your screen? Can you see me?
Bigger.
I see Brian's nodding yes, so good to go. All right. 9th grade success is one of those measurable assessment points that we use to monitor students' probability of graduating on time. As we've shared with you in the past, 9th grade is a key year. A lot of research points to the fact that if a student ends their year on track, defined by 6 credits or more at the end of their 9th grade year, they are more likely to graduate from high school. And so with our high school success dollars, Measure 98, we are required to invest in processes that have teams of teachers coming together to review our student data and develop interventions and protocols to help support students reaching that success. With COVID last year, what you see in the packet is our data that was made official last Thursday. Oregon Department of Ed put this out there. In previous to shutdown 18-19, 81.4% or 408 of our 9th graders ended in 2019 on track with those 6 or more credits. The state did not collect or track the data in 2020, and I hand calculated that number there. So it's not necessarily exactly what Oregon Department of Ed would have reported. For the 2021 school year, you see two different numbers, one for Grants Pass High School and then one for the district. The district data encompasses all of our freshmen, from our life skills programs to the programs we have at juvenile justice, et cetera. And really proud of the fact that even through the COVID shutdown, we were able to maintain 77.8% of our ninth graders ending the year on track. And that's in part very attributed to the work of our presenter we have tonight. Rochelle Watson is our ninth grade success coordinator and leads the charge at Grants Pass High School. She coordinates all of our ninth grade teachers, our ninth grade success mentors. Honestly, she even corrals us administrators into making a difference and doing things that will help keep ninth graders on track. So I've asked Rochelle to give you a snapshot of what we're doing with our ninth grade success teams, which have really, I mean, what we accomplished last year during shutdown and what she did last year and how the system is changing this year because we're in person is awesome. So much more better now that we're in person. But Rochelle, I'm super happy to have you here tonight and sharing with the board the awesome work of our ninth grade success team with your leadership at hand.
Thank you. Todd, I think I have a PowerPoint. You got that?
I do. I'll bring it right up for you.
Thank you.
How's
So
that?
thank you, Trish. I'm so excited to be presenting here today. Thank you for having me. I am just thrilled with what our program has started and is going to continue to do. Go ahead and next slide. So our ninth grade success program, I stole this motto from David Douglas. That's what all great teaching is, right? Borrowing and adapting from what people already have established. But I love this motto that we believe that every student can graduate and that every student needs at least a little bit of help. So our mission is to provide students and families with a partner who already knows how Grants Pass High School works, because with a partner, a student is never alone and families always know who to turn to for help. So at the core of our ninth grade success are our students and our teachers. And then outside of that are our success mentors, who I'll introduce in just at the next slide. And so the teachers and students, then the success mentors come and wrap around them. The counselors come and wrap around them. And then finally, the admin team comes and wraps around the entire team as needed. Go ahead and next slide. These are our success mentors. I am so grateful to have 4 adult success mentors working with me this year. Karen Lalonde and Allison Hopkins were with me last year in the beginning of this new program that we've established. Kayla Wilhelm is new to us this year, but doing a phenomenal job. And then Tanya Wood is not new to the district, but just started a couple weeks ago with us in the success program as one of our mentors as well. Next slide, please. So the success mentors and our success space, we are located in room 202 at the high school, and we work to interrupt those cycles of attendance, behavior, or course failure, course performance failure. So our goals are to be proactive and targeted. We use data early on to match mentors to students to offer early interventions. We're very collaborative, so all of the mentors are part of our ninth grade teacher teams, and they're also available for class support. So the mentors, for example, today, Karen Lalonde went into Jenny Tyrell's English class and helped out with a couple kiddos who needed just a little extra time and support working on a writing assignment. We're very visible. All the mentors are in classes. So 3 of them are in our Reach for Success class, which is about kind of like an Avid Light class. It's intended to help support our ninth graders who maybe struggled a little bit in middle school, who with a little extra encouragement, a little extra organizational process, a little extra support, could be successful without that additional support the rest of their high school career. And so they are in those reach classes, building relationships with students. They're out in the hallways, very visible. We provide snacks so that students know where to come to if they need anything. And the mentors are just very student focused. We focus on the whole picture, not just the academic aspect of the students' lives. Next slide, please. So Trish already went over this. I am beyond thrilled in the first year of our program that, given all the constraints of last year, that we ended fairly comparably to where we were before. If you look at neighboring districts, you can see that that wasn't the common situation with on track for ninth graders. So I'm super thrilled with where we landed last year. And that is 100% because of the mentors and the teacher teams that work so diligently to just be that tenacious person for our students. Next slide, please. So ninth grade success looks different this year. It's looked different about every year. And I think, continue to look different as we grow with it. But this year we have 6 ninth grade teacher teams. The teams are made up of a mentor, an English and science teacher who have the same group of kids. So if, I'll go into that in just a minute. There's a PE wellness teacher who represents the department. There's a math teacher on the team who represents the department. There's an administrator, and then there's myself and Sarah Craven. Sarah Craven is our Reach for Success teacher. So she has a lot of the students, so she's invited to all the meetings. Next slide. So you can see these are the 6 teacher teams. And so you can see how many students are within each team. This data was run a couple weeks ago. And so some student numbers have shifted, but like Tyro Whitler's group, they only have 2 sections of ninth graders, so they have a lower number of students than, for example, Brown and Belcher, who have 3 sections of ninth graders each. But this is how we sort of organized it. The English and science teacher have the same group of students. And then because our schedule wouldn't allow us to block out the other teachers, they are just beautiful representatives of their department, because those departments just collaborate so well that they could be like, oh yeah, I know this is what's going on in that math class, or this is what's happening in PE. And then you can see that the mentors are assigned to the teacher teams. Next slide, please. So we use data a lot. I never knew I would use this much data in my life, but I'm really enjoying it because I feel like it's a great starting point for how to support students. So we were very collaborative with the middle school counselors and administrators last spring, using both data and anecdotal evidence to help place kids appropriately. During the ninth grade year, I pull from our intranet the on-track query, and then we kind of use these guidelines for how we support our students. So if students have above 80% attendance and either 0 or 1F, they are in our green zone. So they are assigned a mentor. Every student has a mentor that they can reach out to. And the mentor does biweekly check-ins on those students to see if there's any drastic shift that needs to be addressed. But for the most part, we acknowledge that the green zones are doing all right without that additional support. The yellow zone means they're above 80% with either 2 or 3 Fs, or they're below 80% but have 0 or 1 Fs. And we know that that attendance issue could be something that will cause grades to fluctuate in the future. These students are assigned to be a focus student for the mentor. So each mentor has about 40 students that they really focus on each quarter. And we prioritize students in this zone for our student talk meetings. If they're below 80% attendance and have more than 1 F, then they're part of our red zone. So we refer them to counselors or to our admin support team to try to get to the deeper barriers that the students are experiencing. Next slide, please. So the way that the meetings work, they occur during prep time mostly. We discuss about 10 students per group, which is astronomically better than what we were able to do last year. Last year, we did what was affectionately referred to as like a speed dating type situation, where we had 4 tables set up and teachers would just go to the table where they had students that were being discussed. But on average, we talked about 24 students every 3 weeks. This year, with 6 teams talking about 10 students each time, we're hitting at least 60 students, which is just so much better. I pulled the data, and then the teacher teams focus on tier 1 and tier 2 level interventions. Once a student has been discussed a couple times using these tier 1 and tier 2 level interventions, we then refer them to the red zone team. And then the goal is that 3 times a semester, we would have a half-day pullout. And the intent behind this is that it gives us more time to talk about students. It's time to pull in students to have some group conversations, bring in other teachers or parents or counselors. We already had to cancel our first half-day pullout. Was supposed to be this week. It got canceled not only because, as you all know, subs are hard to come by these days, but also we have career day and PSAT day tomorrow. So we needed to reschedule that. But the goal is to try to do these half-day pullouts. And if not, the goal will be to really implement them next year. Okay, next slide. So with our tiered interventions, the yellow zone students, really we focus on these tier 1 and tier 2 level, which are teacher and mentor driven. Things like assigning them a mentor, sending positive messages home, contacting home, having after school supports, that kind of thing. And then the tier 3 level interventions are mostly counselor admin driven. These would be contracts, mental health referrals, home visits, credit retrieval opportunities. So my team really focuses on the tier 1, tier 2. And so go ahead and then next slide, please. When I was asked to speak, I was asked to bring in some student input. And so we've got 2 slides of just some student quotes, and you'll know they're student quotes because I left in all the spelling and punctuation errors, because as an English teacher, you know, I would have fixed those things, but I wanted it to be authentic. So we left in those. So I'll just give you a moment to kind of look over them. But the essence behind all of the quotes is that students appreciated the positive support from the mentors. They felt encouraged. They felt like they had opportunity to grow and improve. And that was the most amazing thing. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. These are just more examples of the things that the students felt like they got out of the Success program last year. And then when you're ready, the last slide is just a very short video clip of a student who we spent a lot of time with last year. So if you would like to, we can watch a quick little video. It's about 15 seconds of him. And that's on the last one.
This program has helped me a lot because it made me feel very—
Volume up, Todd.
Making me feel like I'm overworked. And it kind of helps me to have somebody there for me every single second of every day to just basically be there like, hey, you're doing great. And it just helps against my stress.
I know that was kind of hard to hear, but I can tell you that a lot of us would not have expected this student to speak so positively about the Success program last year, because we spend a lot of time working with him. But it just goes to prove that positive— oh, I'm sorry, next slide. It just goes to prove that it really does just take one caring, capable adult to make a huge impact on the students' lives. And our goal is to be that person for our students.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board?
I think Principal
Don?
Thompson was going to say something.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Go ahead. Do we need to unmute Ryan? There we go.
I just did. There he goes.
Thank you.
I get a lot of privileges taken away from me from time to time, so thank you for allowing me the chance to speak. Just a shout out to Rochelle. The difference that she and her student success mentors have is they have an attitude of service. They are here to help and support our students, the families. They take on whatever role is needed. They're there to help our teachers. And for some small examples, we've done a lot of after school groups, both last year during our unique year, and then this year we're getting some more tutoring going. Rochelle just takes that on and she says, you know what, let me coordinate with transportation. I'll make sure the permission slips or the lists are done for transportation. And I just want to commend Rochelle, the job she's doing. I feel like we have a lot, we're ripe for growth in this area. Already excited about the progress made and super excited for the future. So shout out to Rochelle, great job.
And
You
the
might
last
have-
thing I'll just say is that you might have seen on the news that the state of Oregon last year dropped by, there was a 12% decline in the on-track rate for the state. And ours was only a 3% decline. Given the circumstances of COVID and the shutdown, we're feeling pretty good about where we're at. Any questions?
Don?
Yeah, I was just curious, what percentage of them, of parents are involved in this process of knowing if their child is in need of or are involved in any capacity? Parental involvement here. I'm just looking for anything, any feedback on that.
I'll just quickly comment on that, that a lot of that is done through our teachers first and foremost. So the teachers are getting a hold of families in which progress needs to be made. Parent conferences are coming up here in another couple of weeks, and that will be another time where parent communication is done. What we don't want to do is the role of the student success mentor and those her assistants. We don't want to replace that teacher, and that is they're the direct line with a parent. The only contact that our student success office might make is to coordinate the after school kinds of events or other extra things that might be provided.
So continuing with that question, and maybe you've answered, would parents know that their child is being coached or mentored, so to speak?
Part of our process, we have a list, and we could spend quite a bit of time going through it. We won't right now, but there's a list of interventions, tier 1, 2, and 3 that Rochelle mentioned. And one of the main ones that we utilize is parent involvement, parent awareness. And so as we get into tier 2 interventions, it's more serious. We have the parent come in for a meeting, and that'll be with a counselor, could be with Rochelle, could be with an administrator, maybe a teacher. And they're involved early on in that process. The tier 1 is more like, hey, we're going to treat you like a 14, almost 15-year-old and see if you're able to take care of this on your own. But once it gets a little more serious and grades haven't improved, then we involve the parent.
Thanks, Ryan. Last question will be for Rochelle. Do the mentors need or have like credentials to be a part of the process?
So the mentors are classified staff, and so they have to meet whatever requirements there are for in order to be hired as a classified staff. Additionally, when we interview them, we really kind of focus on who can support students, not just overall academically, but specific content as well. Since we do some of the after school tutoring, we want to make sure that the mentors feel comfortable helping the students with some content or at least a basis. But really we focus more on the organizational, how to be a student aspect of mentoring.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, Rochelle, Trish, and Ryan, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate what you're doing. So keep up the good work, Rochelle. Thank you. All right, 4.3, our Oregon report cards. Director Evans, we'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, for a number of years now, the state of Oregon has required the Oregon report card to be sent out to parents in each district. There is a district profile, which is the one being projected for you right now. And then each school has their own individual at a glance profile. It provides data and information about the school, from demographics to student outcomes. And the second page of it for there's a blurb for what kinds of activities, academic supports, various things offered at each school. So it's kind of a way to let families know a little bit more detail about the school their child's attending. By law, we're required to send these out to parents, which most of our schools have via Parent Square. We're also required to make sure you as a board know about them. They're available in print at our district office and then on our district website in both English and Spanish. You'll notice this year quite a bit of data is missing right there on the front page. The the reading, the language arts assessment, math, all lead you to links out on the state website to look at results. Typically there our school data is in there, but with COVID last year, the state chose to report in this fashion. I do want to take this opportunity to remind you that as a board, you supported us having students opt in to state assessment last year for English and math. And in total, we had 16 elementary students take the assessment, 8 middle school and 2 high school students. So if you were to look out on our state, on those data points out on the state website, you might be like, well, where's all of our data? We did not assess very many students last year with the state assessment. Our on track to graduate data is out there in public, as well as our regular attender data. Our attendance data for last year looked pretty solid as well. And so those report cards are available for you and the public to review. Any questions about the Oregon report card?
I don't think so. So thank you, Trish. All right, so our last item is our district improvement plan. So Director Evans, you're our star tonight.
I'm tag teaming on this one with Directors Zatola and Bloomquist. We're here to update you on our district improvement plan. This is an annual process that we review our district continuous improvement plan. Our strategic plan is directly related to these specific actionable items that are on our improvement plan. This is the Oregon Department of Education's template, and it is a 3-year plan. So if you scroll down and look at goal number 1, you'll see that there are measurement points by June of 2020, by June of 2021, and then by June of 2022. What we've done here is just put in some chicken scratch to update you on where we're at. And of course, with the shutdown in 2020 and then what we experienced in 2021, the data is a little bit different than what we had hoped for or set our goals towards. Our first goal for you tonight is related to our graduation rate. So we're here to make sure all of our students graduate within 4 or 5 years, either with a regular diploma or their GED. We also want them to leave us with a post-secondary plan. And so that goal is measured by our 9th grade on track, which you just heard a report on where we stand for that. Our regular attender data, which I put what the data looked like for last year as a district. 74% of our students were regular attenders. And then finally, decreasing our dropout rate to fall below the state average. For 2021, that data won't come out and be public until January. So it goes back to the 1920 school year. We did, just as an admin team, review our goals for this particular item for the year 2022, trying to establish what's really reasonable and following up on. And so today we talked about our regular attender rate, and our target will be more in line with 80% versus 90%. We're going to do that for each one of our goals over the next couple of weeks, and Susan's going to tell you about goal number 2.
Yeah, so I don't even have chicken scratch data for you for goal number 2. So goal number 2 is around 5th and 8th grade math and their performance on the Smarter Balanced Assessment. But June 2020, we don't have Smarter Balanced Assessment data. And then like Director Evans just talked about, we had very few students choose to opt in for the Smarter Balanced last spring. So for both June 2020 and 21, we don't have any of that data. We do have some beginning preliminary data from our in-house assessments. I talked earlier when we were talking about during the elementary update about Acadience, which is the universal screening tool we use for reading. Our tool for math is called iReady, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in my next part, but I'm excited to say that middle school has taken on iReady also as their universal screener. So we'll have a consistent measure from kindergarten through 8th grade with math. And some students will have iReady data multiple points during the year if they're progress monitoring, but all students will have that data at our screening times, fall, winter, and spring. So we're just now crunching those numbers and getting that information. But those are some of the other numbers that we look at as we're looking ahead to that smarter balance. But we won't have that information until this spring.
And just like all the other data, it's very skewed by what's been going on with COVID. And so if we remember in some of our brain lessons, we feel and then we think. And so if our students aren't feeling well, it's really hard to think well. We targeted this goal here, number 3, for reducing student behaviors and referrals, but we really didn't have a lot of students on site very often. One of the hard data that we can give you are our threat assessment or risk assessments. And by June of 2020, we had 44. And of course, last year with very few students, we had a total of 15. If I go back 1 year, if we could see that as a trajectory, we had 54 assessments in the 2018-19 school year. So even though the previous year with June 2020 was impacted significantly by COVID and reduced students on campus, we did have a reduction there. So we'll continue to track that over time as students are back in. We have had a couple of risk assessments already done this year. We do know that students have come back in after being in a sort of a strange state of school and home and confinement and a global pandemic. It's definitely showing up in how the kids are feeling, actually how all of us are feeling. And so we expect to see probably an increased number there as students are working to regulate themselves. But I'll talk in the next section about some of the strategies.
So speaking of strategies, if we go back to goal number 1 and look at our strategies there, we identified 3 very specific strategies we would implement. If you scroll down all the way to the strategy part, there we go. So our first strategy, you heard a little bit more about tonight, our 9th grade success team. Strategy 2, 1.2 is related to AVID and instructional best practices in the classroom. And then our third strategy is related to regular attendance. We know that students need to be at school if we're going to help them get across that finish line. So again, we've been talking a lot about ways to re-engage students. Right now, attendance is spotty. We're working on strategies to try to encourage students and parents to come to school more often. Some of the issues related to anxiety and just the social emotional stress of school have weighed heavily on some students. So again, putting procedures and activities in place that will help mitigate some of those barriers to attending school regularly. Goal number 2.
So I mentioned that we now have a consistent math screener for kindergarten through 8th grade with iReady. A lot of our strategies had to do with implementing our core math programs, Ready Classroom being the one that we use at elementary, which is a partner program to iReady. But it was all about implementing that program, the new program at the middle school, professional development, feedback from principals and observations. And then, sorry to be a broken record, but last couple of years, all of that got interrupted. However, we are off to a strong start. Middle school had training, in-person training with a trainer on iReady. I believe it was Teacher Prep Week that they had that. And then they've already had a second training that was last week, and then elementary kind of piggybacked on that, and we had a session for 30 elementary teachers on iReady also last week. We've already got multiple trainings scheduled out, again in person for the rest of the school year at different times at middle school and at elementary. So So we're excited to kind of get back into the game and refresh ourselves on what that program was, because for both middle school and elementary, it was a fairly new implementation. So we're getting back to the basics of the EdGems and Ready Math, our core programs, and then how we can use iReady to supplement those programs, use them as interventions, and use all the data from them. So we're looking forward to the rest of the year.
And then all the way down to the strategies under goal 3. We have been able to do some things, surprisingly, with all of the COVID stuff. So for example, our Gladiola High School, their whole team did the discovery training during in-service week this year. So their whole team was able to go through that social emotional program, and they're working this fall to figure out ways to implement those strategies to help kids really kind of be their best self and to practice self-regulation. We a little hard to do the PBIS resetting with staff not being necessarily on site or with all the restrictions. So that is one of the strategies that will still continue to pursue those PBIS strategies for positive behavior reinforcements for kids and for calibrations. So we'll continue on. The other bit that we have been able to do is the previous year we had implemented, actually 2 years ago, I think, Susan, stepping stones. And so last year was a pause because it's a very much a hands-on program to help our little ones regulate. But we've got that going strong this year and have expanded that program. We've also expanded the resources at the elementaries that we mentioned earlier, getting more skills training staff in to help with children that are really struggling with regulation as they come into school, learning those skill sets and then being able to adapt to the classroom and be ready for learning.
I will just add that on Stepping Stones, we are currently serving 12 students in that program. And then we hope in January, by the end of January, to double that and be up to 24 students. So really excited about that opportunity and providing that resource for those students.
So as we're coming back to being in person, we're going to start having more trainings that we know our staff need, but we're also letting our staff have a little bit of space because this has been a hard transition getting back to work. And so giving a little bit of break around that, we'll get back to more intensive training for staff and provide those opportunities. I will say, and I think our mentors, I know they were part of this a couple weeks ago, I provided a more in-depth kind of a go back to the learning about ACEs for just a little bit and the science behind that, but then moving towards real tangible practices for resilience and self-awareness and mindfulness to help adults work with kids to co-regulate and help them get to a space where they can be in their best learning brain. And so we were able to do that, and we'll continue to offer those kinds of supports for our staff.
I would just say in general for all of these goals and our strategies, that it's nice to be talking about the work that we all got into this profession to do, and not some of the other things that we've spent the majority of our time talking about the last year and a half. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time for District 7.
Well, I would echo that. It is really nice to hear just a report based on the kids and the students and the staff and what we're here to do. So thank you for the reports. We're excited to see. I am, obviously disappointed that we've been in the world that we've been in for the last 18 months to 2 years. So we aren't able to see the progress that we were hoping to see in that time, but I am excited to see where we can go here in the next couple of years as we get back to doing what we should be doing. So. Are there any questions from the board members? Okay, well, thank you. Nice job.
Yeah,
We
thank
appreciate your reports. Thank you, Trish, for being our star tonight. All right, we'll go to 5.0, our board reports and special concerns.
This is Debbie Brownell. Can you hear me?
We can, Debbie, go ahead.
All right. Well, I thought I'd mention that I attended a Zoom meeting on the legislative update with OSBA. And one of the things that caught my attention was the legislature's work on dealing with school boards that make decisions that are not legal and what the legislature wants to do about that. And, nothing was decided this session, but it will be on the future agendas for discussion. So I think that's something to be aware of. I want to thank Kirk for graciously agreeing to give a quick update to Road Gateway Rotary Club, and lots of positive feedback about his presentation, basically on the mission and vision and pillars that we've been working on, but he did an outstanding job. One of the members who has been a long time volunteer at an elementary school asked when volunteers might be welcome back in the schools. And I said, I don't know. I'll see if I can find out.
I'll just respond to that. We're reevaluating that monthly right now. Essential volunteers as a category we've sort of created for like our band program to function at its level it needs to. We need the parents involved. We have guest speakers from outside that we need as part of our co-curricular. And as the case rates trend like they are, we're going to be expanding that. And so we're taking a look at that on a month-by-month basis. I would hope and anticipate that we could be a little more back to how we used all volunteers by late this winter or early spring at the latest, ideally sooner. One of the challenges with volunteers is that we're required to track and make sure they also meet the mandate to volunteer in schools. Like teachers, you got to show your COVID card or have an approved exception and follow the related accommodations. And so that creates a whole nother set of challenges to monitor and track and follow regarding those requirements.
And I also wondered, the board had to do the training on child abuse reporting and recognition. And I wondered if that is also part of the volunteers training.
That is not a required part of volunteer training.
All right, thank you.
But what I do understand is that additional background clearance through fingerprinting is now mandated for volunteers.
Background clearance is fingerprinting, depending on if they're going to supervise children without employed adults, then they would need to be fingerprinted. But otherwise, if they're going to come in and read to a group of third graders with the teacher in the room, they would not necessarily need the fingerprinting, but a background check is required.
Isn't that something we've always done?
That is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary?
I understand that training wouldn't be mandatory, but that's one of those things that through technology has become very cost effective to deliver. I'm thinking as an option for volunteers, certainly letting them take that training might not be a bad thing.
Isn't that training mandatory reporter training?
What they have there is different.
There's mandatory reporting, and then there's suspecting child abuse. Recognizing child abuse.
And we're talking about all those trainings, asbestos, you name it, that we just recently did.
If you're employed by the district, you take, I think there's like 9 or 10 specific trainings. But as far as volunteers, it's a very narrow scope of trainings. They're not required to run about lockout, tagout, or hazmat, or blood spill, etc. So
I might be getting confused with an additional coaches mandatory training.
yes, coaches definitely have a lot.
It started this year.
Yes.
I went through the full gamut, so I was getting that confused with whatever we're training for.
Lots of different
Not
levels.
saying we need to do anything, just suggesting since it's low cost that
Certainly recognizing child abuse and understanding some of the role, I think, is important for everybody. I mean, we don't even interact with the kids as a school board. You know, we're taking that, and I think for volunteers who are interacting with the students, I would be in agreement with that. I think we have enough of that, unfortunately, in the world and in our community that if we can protect even one more kid, it's a good thing. All right, any other board reports or special concerns?
Well, wanted to let you know my wife and I attended the Rogue Valley Symphony on Sunday in the Performing Arts Center, and it reminded me I'd forgotten how beautiful a venue we have, second to none. I saw Ross Rowe's widow, and it was neat to see her, and I thought of Ross and how he used to say that he had checked it out and it was the best venue between Seattle and San Francisco. That was his opinion. Of course, he lived here, and it's very nice what we have there, what the community has because of what we did in collaboration with the community a number of years ago. So if you get a chance, attend something in that Performing Arts Center.
In addition, over the weekend, we had Pride of the Northwest hosting. It's been 2 years since we've hosted for the band fundraiser, and we had 7 bands in attendance. Our own band performing, not competing for being ranked because we were the host school, but a great turnout all day Saturday. I was a volunteer for about 14 hours, and I paled in comparison to other volunteers.
Well, thank you. We will go to item 6.0, our superintendent report.
Yeah, first one, I sent the board an email about being on the presidential search committee for the new president for RCC. If the board had any, I did get a response from Member Nelson regarding priorities for the district and community, represented community well in terms of what you would like to see in the future of RCC and priorities for the incoming president. When we look at resumes and experiences, I was fortunate to be part of the group with Kathy Kemper-Pell to do the same. And so if you have specifics, please let me know. Our first meeting is on Friday. I'm meeting with high school administration and Director Evans to help us really identify what work we need to do with RCC. And then organizational capacity. So with the departure of Director Ely at the end of this year, knowing we'll probably have to call on her in retirement for ongoing support, I've laid out an organizational chart. Unfortunately, they're front and back, so you can't lay them out side by side. Apologize for that. So the current organizational chart, you'll see it does say current on it. If you were interested in who's in what positions, Todd, I apologize, you mentioned try to put some names to it. At the end, I forgot that part. But basically, it's the director team that is that first line, lengthy line below the superintendent, and then subordinates or responsibilities beneath those. The shift here being when we lose a Sherry Ely, who might be, I think she was OSBA Business Director of the Year at one point, and maybe the next executive director for OASBO in her retirement. We're losing a lot of tribal knowledge and a skill set that is very difficult to find. And so in reorganizing this is having that, as I took over the superintendency, that was not one of my strength areas. It was one I've continued to hone and sharpen. It's important that we have 2 sets of eyes on the budget and finances especially. And so essentially, instead of trying to find Gary's purple cow, we need to have some assurances built in there. So this position of assistant superintendent of operations would have experiences in all areas that you note under, and I'm referring to the right side of the chart at this point. Be moving down that pathway with the posting of the director of finance or business director, I believe is how we'll refer to it in the future. And then making moves to, very shortcoming to move to this model. The additional thing in here is you heard over multiple times from our Director Evans and Zatola about instructional practices and instructional strategies and how do we, that is the one thing that seems to fall off the plate when the plate gets so heavy, is growing our own people and supporting our own people. And instructional coaches was a term that was mentioned, and we talked about this morning in our principals meeting. It's an area that we have dabbled in previously, but have not been able to make work for D7. There are other models out there that we want to support going forward. So in future years, it is 100% agreement by our team that we need this model. We don't quite know what it looks like yet. So on the left side there, you see ELA and math TOSA as teachers on special assignments. And whether that's one or it's multiple, that's to be determined and strategized as we move forward. But building organizational capacity is one of those goals, 4 pillars. And so wanted to see if the board had questions about that. I have spoken with each one of you individually to share this concept with you, and now moving forward with this. Are there questions?
No, just clarification. Are we in essence adding 3 positions, the TOSAs as well as the assistant superintendent?
Yes. Well, the TOSA is a piece to be figured out. Ideally, that we're starting this by the 22-23 school year, so next fall with the TOSA. We need to be in full transition on the right side of this chart before the end of this year, which will create a position, one additional position before the end of this year. It is possible to transition from this into this without filling the newly created position because we'll retain the current capacity for the rest of this year. It's a matter of putting the right players in the right spots going forward. I hope that's.
So I guess I'd like to say that I'm supportive of the teachers on special assignment that has shown up a number of times at the OSBA conference as a way to prove things within the district. Over on the right side of the chart, the I don't know how to articulate it well. On the left side, we have 4 directors who essentially the people in those positions are high quality people and could someday wind up being superintendent type people. Over on the right side, I guess the way I put it is I'd be happier if there were like 3 positions that were equivalent people to take over that assistant superintendent of operations. And I know that duties are shifted around within the directors on the left side, so it just occurs to me that some of those duties could be shifted around on the right side, so you had 3 people and some of those transportation, warehouse, safety risk, print shop stuff were distributed under those 3 people. Just my way of thinking about growing people for the next level.
I totally agree with that. So what are listed here, not the positions that are also underneath some of these. This chart really separates the instructional and achievement side of education with the operational side. And when you look at these other departments that aren't necessarily instructionally focused, that's duly noted, Gary. And the hope would be that you do have between at least 3 of those positions, people who could vie for a future superintendency. We have had a business director previously become our superintendent, so that's not out of the realm. HR is not out of the realm. And then, of course, an assistant superintendent.
So what would be the benefit to having an assistant superintendent of operations as opposed to just a director of operations?
So I've talked to some other colleagues. I think in the absence of the superintendent, having a designated point person to take that role right now, that can vary. It's Director Ely, it's Director Cantola, in terms of who ultimately that next person is. Even Three Rivers, I've talked to a number of school districts slightly smaller than us, but definitely our size and larger. And just about all of them have a designated assistant superintendent. Even Phoenix Talent has 2 of them. And they actually have one on the academic side and one on the operations side. And so the real benefit ultimately is the oversight of the finances. We had a prior superintendent, prior to me, we had an expert in school finances and a business director. You had 2 sets of eyes on the finances and processes that go with that. Fortunately, we retained Sherry, and that was not my wheelhouse, so I'll never tell you that's my wheelhouse. My knowledge has gone up greatly, but having somebody with that experience and finding somebody to appoint to that position is pretty critical. And really that in mind, knowing fiscal prudence expected by this board, that is held in high regard with this concept.
Good, thanks. All right, any other questions? Okay. Well, we have one action item to approve tonight. It is approval of a middle school required reading, a book entitled Restart, which is action item 7.1. I believe that this book was read by the Parent Advisory Committee, upon which my wife sits. I have now been informed that I will be reading this book and all of my children will be reading this book. So she gave it 2 thumbs up. So not that that should persuade or dissuade anyone from voting yes or no, but just I have been told that I too will be reading this book because it was excellent. So Trish, I'll turn the time over to you to talk a little bit about the book and then we can answer any questions.
Yep, Hillary Russell from South Middle School brought this book forward. She plans on using it with her 6th grade ELA class as a required reading, and per board policy, if there is required reading, it needs to come before the board. We did also have our new district library media specialist review the book. Eva Piper has taken on that role and found positive reviews. That's been included in your packet. It was supported by our Parent Advisory Council as well, and so it comes forward to you today for inclusion on our supplementary reading list.
Okay, any questions on the book?
Look forward to reading it myself with my wife.
Then we can all have a book club. My wife will lead us out. So can we have a motion to approve Restart as a required reading at the middle school?
LaGrange moves to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll give a second, Linda Coolman.
Thank you, Cliff. Any further discussion? All right, Tanya, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Member DeLaGrange,
Yes.
Member Neville,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes.
Member Coleman,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Richardson,
Yes.
Member Brownell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. All right, 8.0, our future meeting dates. Our next board meeting is on the 26th of October, and then we do have a workshop that that evening. So our board meeting will be short. Let me repeat that. Our board meeting will be short. We'll see how it goes. So we will have our board workshop, which is the Diane Isikoff Scholarship training for the board. And then our next board meeting after that will be on the 9th of November and the 16th of November. Both of those will start at 5 p.m. as well.
What is the survey date? Deadline?
I thought it was the 31st of October.
Okay.
So if you have not completed the board survey, which you should have received, maybe we should ask who's done it. Please finish it up before the 31st. So that is one of the topics for our discussion, that to see where we feel as a board we are, and our board evaluation, and areas of concern and areas that we'd like to work on moving forward. So, Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if we have a property committee meeting on the 26th.
I will check with Sherry and we'll notify you.
Okay, thanks.
It better be at 4:45 or at 9 p.m. Just kidding. Okay, so with that, then we will adjourn our regular session, and I've been informed we need to give 10 minutes between general and executive sessions, so we will restart at 6:30. Is it 6:20 now? About? I'm sorry, it's 6:15. That clock is fast. So we'll start our meeting at 6:25 p.m. And District 7 School Board meeting. We have one item remaining on the agenda, and that is 12.1 negotiations, ORS 192.660. We will entertain a motion to approve. Lee.
Gonna be a long meeting.
I'll move to approve the negotiations, ORS 192.660.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Thank you, Tanya. Can we do the roll call vote, please?
Member Delagrane,
Yes.
Member Neville,
Yes.
Member Nelson,
Yes.
Member Coleman,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Richardson,
Yes.
Member Brownell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It carries. And we will adjourn our general session.